We've got ourselves a top 20 matchup this Saturday at Hard Rock Stadium. Miami's opponent, USF, is now ranked number 18, and Mario Cristobal says the Bulls aren't ranked high enough.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Monday, if there is such a thing. I am Alex Donno, University of Miami alumnus, co-host of Locked On ACC and host of Postgame on the Miami Hurricanes radio network. And thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create your account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. On this loaded episode, we'll talk a little bit later on with my paisan Phil Russomanno. We'll have a couple of injury updates coming out of Bethune-Cookman. We didn't have any new injuries in Bethune-Cookman, but there were some injuries before that we have to talk about. We'll discuss the challenges against USF, including their mobile and dangerous quarterback, Byrum Brown. And yeah, folks, this is now a top 20 matchup. You look at the new Associated Press rankings. Miami stands pat at number 5. You had Georgia falling just out of the top 5. They looked unimpressive in their victory against Austin Peay. Oregon looked super impressive, put up a lot of style points in their blowout of Oklahoma State. So they jump in front of Miami, but Miami stays at number 5. And, you know, none of this really matters as long as the Hurricanes keep winning. But this is interesting to see that USF, and well-deserved, because the Bulls beat number 25 their first week at Boise State, and then they beat, what was Florida? 13. You know what? I don't care what Florida was, because Florida dropped out of the top 25. They are where they belong now. But USF pulled off that upset in the swamp, and the Bulls are now number 18 in the country. You see it there. By the way, let me run off the top 25 for those listening to the audio version. Ohio State, Penn State, LSU, Oregon, Miami rounding out the top 5, Georgia, Texas, Notre Dame, Illinois, Florida State now in the top 10. We'll see them in a few weeks. South Carolina, Clemson at number 12. Honestly, Clemson did not look good against Troy. I don't even feel like they should be that high at this point. Oklahoma 13, big win over Michigan. They just got Iowa State, just beat Iowa. Tennessee at 15, Texas A&M, Ole Miss, USF at 18, Alabama, Utah, Texas Tech, Indiana, Michigan, Auburn, and Mizzou. That rounds out your top 25. And Mario Cristobal appeared on the Joe Rose Show this morning on 104.3 WQAM. And, you know, when he started talking about USF, who again is now inside that top 20, Cristobal said they are not ranked high enough, watching the continual development of their roster and their program. And Alex Golish, their head coach, and at USF a few years ago, before Golish got there, it's an absolute laughingstock of a program. He's turned them around. And at this very moment, you know, Miami can knock them down a peg, hopefully on Saturday. But at this moment, USF is the group of 5 team with the highest probability of making the college football playoff. And, you know, they could still obviously feasibly get in there, even if Miami beats them this weekend. But the Hurricanes are looking to knock them down, hopefully this week. Mario Cristobal talked about USF, their physicality of their offensive and defensive line, the speed in the secondary. Their linebackers run sideline to sideline. They have a disruptive defense, he said. They have multiple fronts coverage. They do an excellent job, and they're a great football team. This is as good a team as we played or will play this season, he said, all season. The evidence is all over tape. We have to get a hell of a lot better to accomplish what we want. So yeah, that's the test in front of us against USF. And folks, it's not just about, and I know we got a lot of questions that we're going to answer today from Locked On Canes insiders about going up against a dangerous running quarterback. And something I'll say about Byrum Brown, the USF quarterback, it looks like he has gotten better and more efficient in throwing the football. So he's like more of a legit dual threat guy. He's obviously been running really well. I think he leads USF in rushing so far this season. He's got 2 rushing touchdowns over his first 2 games, but I think he's become a more dangerous passer. So it's going to, you'd still, if you're Miami, you'd like to try and shut him down as a runner and, force him to try to beat you with his arm. But it seems like he's more equipped to do that than he was at the time Miami faced him last year. Because, Miami went up against Byrum Brown last year. Hurricanes won that game. I double-checked the final score from last year, 50-15, but it didn't feel that much of a blowout because USF was right there with Miami in the first half. Miami was able to pull away in Tampa in the second half of that one last year. It's a 50-15 score that was closer than the game would indicate. And Mario Cristobal is giving his opponent for this week a ton of respect, as you would expect him to do, right? And for him saying this is as tough of an opponent as we'll face all year, he's not intentionally trying to disrespect, Notre Dame, who Miami already beat, or Florida State and everybody else who's on the schedule this year, and SMU. He's really trying to kill the opponent with kindness, and you set the tone for your team and for your players that you respect every single opponent, and you treat them, all of them, like it's the toughest game you're going to play all year. But with that said, this is a legitimately difficult, tricky game this coming weekend. We get this question from the 561 who says, "Hey, Donno, do you see Miami falling into the same trap that Florida did?" He says, "On a side note, I enjoyed the Gator fans' tears on Saturday night." Okay, well, here's the thing. This is not a trap anymore. Thank you, Florida, for losing to USF. It's no longer a trap game. Zero excuse whatsoever. If there's a single player on Miami's roster, if there's a single coach on staff, if there's a single athletic trainer or media relations staffer who takes this opponent lightly, then you deserve what you get on Saturday. And there's no excuse to do that, because what they just did going into the Swamp and beating the formerly ranked Florida Gators in that supposedly impossible place to play in Gainesville, Florida did Miami a big favor, because if there was any chance that anyone on the Miami sideline would be taking USF lightly, that's completely disappeared. USF just put the nation on notice with what they did at the Swamp last weekend. So this is no longer a trap game. This is just a game, and a difficult game. So no, I don't expect Miami to fall into the trap, because, and that, by the way, that's assuming Florida took USF lightly. I don't know if that was the case or not. They just got beat, and Billy Napier got outcoached flatly by Alex Golesh. But no, I don't expect Miami to fall into any kind of a trap. We get this question from, it's more of a statement. Well, a statement and a question from Hurricane Keys, who says, "My belief is containing Byrum Brown and his ability to run is the biggest concern heading into USF this weekend. My question is, what do you believe will determine if we walk out of the Rock 3-0 versus 2-1? Well, you're right, and I'll circle back to the quarterback thing, because USF's quarterback, as we've talked about and will talk about, is very dangerous. USF also has an aggressive defense and a really good defensive secondary. I need Miami's plus takeaway margin to continue in this game. DJ Lagway threw an interception against USF on Saturday. Miami so far is +4 on the season in takeaways, have not committed a single turnover. Carson Beck has taken care of the football. And on the flip side, for Byrum Brown, I think he's gone, I want to say something like 265 passing, give or take. I might be a few off on that, but, somewhere between 250 and 300 passing attempts without throwing an interception. So Miami needs to create some turnovers, and Miami's offense, which has been super efficient so far this year. They were very efficient against a difficult Notre Dame in week 1, and they were perfectly efficient, the first team offense anyway, against Bethune-Cookman. 5 drives, 5 touchdowns, no turnovers. So I think that's going to go a long way to deciding this thing. As far as the running quarterback goes, Miami obviously is really going to be putting in the extra time to prepare for what Brown does well, running the football, a lot of designed runs for him. Corey Heatherman last year, I think it was on Kane Sport, they posted all of the opposing stats for Minnesota's defense against quarterbacks running the football. They only really faced one true running quarterback last year in Nevada against Nevada, and they held him to 1 rushing yard. So for what that is, not a huge sample size of running quarterbacks, but I think Miami's defense is going to be well prepared for the way USF is going to try to attack them. We're going to answer more of you guys' questions. We're answering questions from the Locked On Canes insiders, by the way. If you want to join, click the link in the show description below. You get one-on-one questions and answers with me, text directly from my phone to yours and vice versa. Breaking news, show updates. Try it free for 14 days. And then if you like it, you can opt in for $4.99 a month. Mario Cristobal this morning on the radio gave an important injury update and a couple of others that came out of his Saturday presser. You want to keep it locked right here. We're only getting started on this brand new Locked On Canes. Folks, we're only getting started with Supply House. When the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. If you need parts for a project, Supply House has next-day delivery. Talk about a game changer. The part finder tools and 3D schematics can save you hours on jobs where every deal matters. Join their free Trade Master program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use promo code SHCollege5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. We're also brought to you by Game Time. Folks, you're going to get the best deals on tickets the closer we get to kickoff time for Miami against USF this upcoming Saturday at 4:30 p.m. I love college football, the tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stands. There's just nothing like it. But actually getting tickets can sometimes feel like more of a battle than the game itself. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. It is the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay on Game Time. Guys, honestly, it's faster, cheaper, and it's less stressful than any other way I've bought tickets. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. Thank you for making Locked On Canes your first listen on this happy Monday. 45-3, Miami beat Bethune-Cookman. You know, something else, I did my recap episode on Sunday, and I shouted out a lot of different players who I thought did well, including some of the under-the-radar guys. Samson Okunlola, for the second straight week, led Miami with the top pass protection grade at over 87. Keontae Scott on Miami's defense, the starting nickel, had a really good game. Team high 3 tackles for loss. Another one, and again, watching the condensed game back for a second time, Marquise Lightfoot, Miami, one of Miami's top backup edge rushers, behind Ruben Bain and Akeem Mesidor, I thought played another really good game. And his speed and explosiveness, the way he can chase down quarterbacks, I'm hoping he can track down Brown for a sack this coming weekend. But Marquise Lightfoot in his second year is really blossoming. And I thought that's another one who played well. And you can remember him, chasing CJ Carr outside the pocket in that opening game. I mean, Carr ultimately threw a touchdown on that play, which was really, bad job by Miami's defensive backs, leaving a guy open in the end zone. That wasn't on Marquise Lightfoot, but he's done a good job so far, and I hope he can keep that up. All right, answering some more of you guys' questions here. And by the way, going back to Brown, Byrum Brown from USF and what he's done so far this year. He rushed for 66 yards against Florida last week. He's overall this season, he's got 109 rushing yards, 2 rushing touchdowns. Now, for what it's worth, last year, and this is obviously, I think Brown is a little bit better than he was a year ago. Miami's defense is a lot different scheme, different defensive coordinator, a lot of different defensive personnel. But even last year, we complained about Miami's defense. Miami's D last year held Brown to 27 rushing yards when they faced him in Tampa. So he's going to try to do better. I think the Hurricanes will be very prepared for him. I'll say that. We get a question from BP who says, hey, are we going to be able to stop the quarterback draw against USF? If not, that would be trouble for us, BP. And he's, obviously CJ Carr from Notre Dame had a way too easy quarterback draw touchdown, but you don't necessarily prepare for that the same way against CJ Carr because you probably didn't know he could do that or that they would run that play. I think this time around, you've got 2 games worth of film for this season and, last season as well for Byrum Brown. And I think Miami's going to have a better idea what his tendencies are. So I expect Corey Heatherman to be prepared. It doesn't mean you're going to have a perfect day because you have to go out there and execute. But I think Miami's going to be very prepared for what USF is going to try to do with their running quarterback. Stephen C. says, hey, which team, USF or UF, Miami have them in back-to-back weeks, will be the tougher matchup for us? I know, like, head-to-head, USF just beat UF on the road. I get that. I still would say Florida is the more talented team. Billy Napier got out-coached big time, and DJ Lagway did not have a good game against USF. So I still think Florida could be tougher just based on their talent level. They're also probably going to be pretty desperate when they come to Miami. Like, there's 2 things, and either way could be dangerous. They're either going to be super desperate because they could be coming off of 2 straight losses, USF being one, and they go to Baton Rouge this weekend. So they're either going to be playing to try to save Billy Napier's job, or hopefully they've all completely given up on Napier by that time and it's pure chaos. Or, if they somehow, I'm not expecting this to happen, but if they beat LSU in Baton Rouge, then, Florida is going to be riding high on a streak of confidence. But still, I mean, Florida's a really talented team. I guess my official answer is a non-answer. I think both of these games are going to be difficult. How about that? I'm not a coach, but I'll give you the coach speak anyway. But I'm not sleeping on Florida. For as bad as they may have performed, still a very talented team. All right, here's an important question that brings up an injury update. O. Gomez wants to know, hey, was Hayden Lowe injured on Saturday? Hayden Lowe is Miami's true freshman edge rusher who had a spectacular training camp and, performed in practice like someone who's going to see the field on Saturdays. So Mario Cristobal actually gave an update on this on the Joe Rose show this morning, and he said that Lowe does have an injury, and I think Mario's quote was, it could be a little bit before we see him. I'm not going to speculate what that means, but I would imagine that's like a multiple game deal. So, Lowe's got plenty of time, get better, first year out of high school. Once this dude is ready to hit the field, he's going to dominate and perform. But, to answer your question, the reason why we didn't see Lowe on Saturday when a lot of backups got in, a lot of young players got in, we didn't see him, of course, against Notre Dame either. He's been carrying an injury from training camp. So, I don't know the severity, but I hope he's okay and he recovers. The other, in case you missed it, we talked about this on Sunday. The other injuries for Miami have been, Jordan Lyle, but Mario Cristobal said Lyle could have played on Saturday, but they decided to use an abundance of caution, kept him out. You're going to need him a lot more this Saturday than you needed him last Saturday. So I think we're going to see Lyle in the backfield against USF. And you know what? The last time Jordan Lyle faced USF, he broke off a 90-yard touchdown run. Get another one of those. So Jordan Lyle's fine. The other one was JoJo Trader got banged up last week in practice, and Cristobal said he was a no-go. I don't have the exact quote in front of me, but my good friend Kaz Clayton, who covers Miami, I think she may have gotten a little bit of a scoop on this because she put on her X account that she heard some good news about Trader injury-wise. So I'm just chomping at the bit to see JoJo. You played 9 snaps against Notre Dame, didn't play against Bethune-Cookman. I can't wait to see JoJo out there get significant playing time because in spring ball, fall ball, he looked really, really good. Like JoJo's ready to make a step forward. And, so far, Carson Beck has gotten plenty of help from his receiving core. Malachi Toney, Miami's leading receiver for the first 2 games each with over 80 receiving yards in each of those games. CJ Daniels has been incredible. He's caught 3 touchdowns already this year. Those have been the primary targets for Carson Beck so far, and I'm looking forward to JoJo Trader getting that opportunity as well. We get this one from Kane's Comeback Tour, who says, hey, how do we grade Mo Toure so far this year? 2 games in, I think you give him either like an incomplete just because it's so early, or like a B minus because, okay, he made a mistake in that play against Notre Dame on the long passing play, but Toure also had some big hits in that game. And then Mo Toure, like by the numbers, was superb against Bethune-Cookman, 87.2 grade. He had, I think, 4 tackles in that game in 24 snaps. And I think the best and the most important games are still to come for Mohamed Toure, because what I said about him preseason, I'll say it again. I think with his range and his explosiveness at linebacker, when you start going up against these running quarterbacks, Brown this weekend, Thomas Castellanos in a few weeks, a guy who loves to run the football, I think that's when you're really going to see the value of Mohamed Toure, helping stop these guys and hopefully shut them down. So I would say like incomplete or B minus. There's certain players like 2 games in, Ruben Bain gets an A+, Carson Beck gets an A+, CC Mauinoa gets an A+. Some of these guys are a little bit harder to grade than others. All right, folks, when we come back, we're going to sit down with our good friend. We'll take a look at the rest of the season in USF coming up with our triple Cane, Phil Russomanno, right here on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. You want to keep it locked. Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen. By the way, make sure you make Locked On ACC your next listen. Kenton Gibbs and I are going to have an episode tonight. We'll talk about SMU falling to Baylor, like Clemson basically sleepwalking for like 2.5 quarters against Troy, and Florida State, running up the score on some loser team, East Texas A&M. We have a lot to talk about on Locked On ACC, but a lot more to talk about on Locked On Canes, because I'm joined here by Miami MBA and Triple Cane, my paisan, Phil Russomanno. All right, Phil, so I want to move on to USF in a moment, but a quick look back on the win over Bethune-Cookman. So many different Hurricanes got on the field, thankfully. Anyone, maybe some of the under-radar guys who really stood out to you on the Miami side?
I would say on like the younger side, Fitzgerald had a great play. I mean, just watching him come across, like that's what you've been hearing in practice, that he's making big plays. He's looking like he's almost there. The athleticism's off the charts. And then you get to see it in a real game, which is like awesome for him. So really cool to see that. I would say also too, watching the 2 young tight ends, Gilbert and Schott. Brockshot has really good balance, which was great to see. Like when he got like that one catch and was going up the field, he like kind of shedded a couple tackles, like tiptoed to the like out of bounds line and then got through. And then Gilbert, like just seeing how big he is too. Like he's like 6'7", like looks like an offensive tackle out there, but running like well and making great catches. So seeing it from those guys look great. And then honestly, our second line on the offense is phenomenal too. So really can't complain with like what we have in the trenches at all.
Yeah, like I was talking about the second string O-line when I was doing radio post-game. I had on Don Bailey Jr., who's a former Miami offensive lineman, and he really commended the second string O-line. I thought true freshman Max Buchanan, I thought performed really well. Ryan Rodriguez is not a young guy. He's a veteran, but he looked really good as the second team center. I'm not sure how well Alofi Tuli graded, but he had that great play to save the turnover where he pulled in that fumble from Emory Williams. So he did some work as well.
Absolutely. When Alofi Tuli got that ball too, he was looking at the end zone. He wasn't worried about just like catching it. He was like, I'm ready to get in there.
Yeah. So far so good. And actually, last thing, and this is not just about Bethune-Cookman, but about the first 2 games. Carson Beck, he's been so efficient, Phil, and he's also made some big time throws. You can see the chemistry that he has, especially with Malachi Toney and CJ Daniels, who have been his top 2 guys so far. How do you rate the first 2 games of the Carson Beck era at Miami?
I mean, honestly, you give it an A or an A+, just based off of how efficient he was. Like that, like Bethune game was surgical, like just seeing a little bit more chemistry. But We have to remember too, he didn't really play with these receivers for the entire spring. Like he was like rehabbing from the injury. He got into a really compressed offseason, really got at it, and then was really able to make chemistry with all the receivers. And what's interesting too is that he was really spreading the ball around too. It wasn't like he was just targeting one or two guys. Like you saw a lot of other people catch the ball too, which was really good to see. Which it might not seem like the greatest performance of all time against like a Bethune, for example, but all those reps that he keeps on getting with these guys like throughout the season are going to keep on compounding. And
Yeah.
honestly, I have nothing else like to really say besides like he's been phenomenal.
He really has. Like I gave him an A plus
Yeah.
earlier when I was grading a few players. All right, so looking at the challenge ahead, and I got so many listener questions specifically on Byrum Brown, the USF quarterback, who I think he leads his team in rushing so far. He's got over 100 total rushing yards in 2 games. He's got 2 rushing touchdowns. I think he's a better player than what Miami faced last year. And a lot of it is, I think he's a better passer than he was a year ago. So he's more of a true dual threat. Miami did an okay job against him running last year, but, different defensive scheme, different defensive coordinator, a lot of new defensive personnel. What do you see as being the big challenges for Miami going up against the USF offense?
I would say the biggest issue that we have to face with that offense is going to be tempo. They're going to spread it out like a lot in their formation, and then they're going to get the ball out quick, get to the line quick, and then get right back at it again. The one thing that like we were doing last week against Bethune-Cookman was a little bit more of a cushion for like those quick dink and dunk passes. It might look a little bit different in a game like this just because of the opponent that we're playing, the tempo they're going to bring, and also the way they're going to spread out the field. It's really going to be a big game that we need to have from Jacoby Thomas because safeties in this defense when you're playing against a USF need to come up and tackle and like stop the run too because of that dual threat ability. So if they're able to really like control that, they're going to be in a good spot for the game. But that's really the biggest challenge that we're going to have is working with tempo and working with how spread out that offense is for Galesh.
Tempo is a great point. What about the USF defense? I know you watched their game against Florida. They held Florida to 16 points. So what did you see from USF's defense, and how much of that was them being great versus DJ Lagway not being good last week?
I would say like you put it a little bit of both. Like they had the game plan there, like they were doing well with coverage, I would say, but a lot of it was DJ Lagway going big game hunting. Like you would see like some of these routes, like there's a lot of intermediate routes in the middle of the field that are going to be more open when we're playing against a USF defense. So guys like Malachi Tony, like the tight ends are going to be involved a lot more in a game like this. So it's like really like how Carson Beck plays really works well against this defense because it's take what the defense gives you. You're not going to have to go for a big play every single play. If you like kind of consistently carve through them, you can get to the end zone. And also just having a good offensive line that you can trust and run behind is always good too, because I thought Florida really like pulled off the run throughout that game. Especially they were getting pushed on the offensive line. And with ours, we know that should be a strength and we should get pushed. So it's like really don't like give up on your game plan, like really continue with like what you're doing and you can be successful.
I mean, this is going to be this might be the biggest football game in the history of the CW network. Like that's where with this ridiculous ACC TV deal, we're on the CW at 4:30 p.m. right after an all new Smallville, I think, or this weekend. So I mean, what's your prediction, Phil? I know it's early in the week, but do you have a prediction for how this is going to play out with a top 20 matchup, number 5 Miami against number 18 USF?
I think Miami is going to win the game. I think the reason why is because as long as our game plan stays similar to we're going to focus on the run, we're going to take what the defense gives us, and our defense really holds up and works with tempo, I think we should be able to come out of this game with a win. The score, I really don't know. It could be a close game. It could be by a lot. It really just depends on how well we execute and how well we have that push on the front of the line. So I'll say Miami wins it.
Is there anything, Miami's 2-0, but is there anything you've seen from the Hurricanes that you're a little concerned about? I mean, they gave up 14 first downs against Bethune defensively. I was, obviously not all the first team defense, but is there anything you want to nitpick after these first 2 games?
Yeah, I would say like just the biggest concern is that the quarterback for Bethune last week had like I think it was like a 90% completion percentage or something like really high. But that's because of like that dink and dunk. Like we gave a lot of
Yeah.
cushion.
Yeah.
So it's one of those kinds of things that is that a concern to me? Like, yeah, nitpicking, yeah, it is. But it's one of those things that I think that was just the game plan because they didn't want to have any big plays get broken. But I think with like chemistry and communication, they're really gonna be working on that. And that's something that Heatherman's been preaching since he got here. So as long as they can really work on communication, especially with shifts and stuff like that, that USF's gonna do, because like we know how that looked last year. So as long as we don't have a repeat of that, like things can be a little bit more smooth sailing.
Well, it's the start of the week here on a glorious victory Monday. We'll be covering Miami versus USF the rest of the week, which is it's a big time matchup. And for those who were asking earlier, is this going to be a trap game? Thanks to the Florida Gators, this is not a trap. I think everyone understands that USF is a legit opponent. Miami will not take them lightly. So huge thanks here to Phil Russomanno. Want to make sure you follow him. Eventually, I'm going to bully him into changing that X account. You can follow him at psizzle22684. And he really is a great follow, and I love talking Canes with him. So we'll talk to everyone again next time on another episode of Locked On Canes. By the way, it's another big moment on Locked On. For college football fans, Locked On and Fire TV present College Football Kickoff, your ultimate college football weekly preview. Drake Toll of Locked On Big 12 leads the conversation alongside two-time AP Coach of the Year Gary Patterson, former college star Jesse Holley, and Locked On's local experts like myself. A college football preview only Locked On can do. Catch College Football Kickoff every Thursday throughout the season, only on Fire TV. We'll talk to everyone next time on another episode of Locked On Canes. We are part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.